We showed some encouraging signs. We pinned them back and had wave after wave of attack. Not my words, Carol, the words of Gareth Southgate. I don't think many people would agree with him. The game against Slovenia, finishing in a second consecutive 0-0 draw for England, just as insipid as the first. Denmark's impotence against Serbia meant that England nevertheless topped a group in which 5 out of the 6 games were drawn. All eyes and all television sets now turn to Gelsenkirchen on Sunday. At least that's not going to be a draw. Southgate made one change last night, but it's unchanged lineup here on the Green and White podcast, brought to you by Argyle Life. Joining me is Finn. Good evening, Finn.
Oh, yeah.
You all right?
Yeah, just very bored.
I think we all we'll get into that in a minute. Also joining me is Sam. Good evening, Sam.
Evening, Stan. Did you say 2 consecutive 0-0 draws? I know the Denmark game was boring, but there were 2 goals in there.
Oh, yeah. 2
consecutive very boring draws. Yeah, we'll go with that.
You should have been writing my intros, clearly.
Right.
And also joining me is Adam. Good evening, Adam.
Good evening. What our audience won't know is that I've battled through technical problems just to be with you this evening. So that's how much Argyle Life likes to deliver to bring ourselves to your screens.
Thank you very much, Adam. And you even got here before Sam, who didn't have any technical troubles.
That's par for the course, but you know.
Basical. Yeah. We're live now on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So join us on whichever platform you prefer. Get your comments coming in, and we'll do our best to respond as they come in. So we'll start off with, were England the worst team ever to top a group at the Euros? Mentioned before, in this group, 5 out of the 6 games in this group were drawn. Just 7 goals in the entire group. For contrast, in the group with France, Austria and Poland, there were 15 goals. Denmark and Slovenia both went through without winning a game, which is only the second and third time that's happened since the Euros expanded to 24 teams. Does anybody know the first team that went through without winning a game? Go on, Sam.
It was Portugal, and they went on to win the tournament in 2016.
It was Portugal, so I'm sure we're all very much looking forward to a Denmark versus Slovenia Euros final in 2 or 3 weeks' time. England were 19th on expected goals out of the 24 teams in this tournament. Another unconvincing performance against Slovenia. Just 0.8 expected goals created against a team ranked in the 50s in the FIFA rankings. So, do you think England are the worst team ever to win a group at the Euros? Don't know who wants to jump in on that.
Oh, it's hard to argue against it, isn't it? I mean, yeah, okay. There's things that come to mind. If I look at the group we were just mentioning with Portugal, I think Hungary won that group and then conceded 4 goals in their next knockout game. Maybe they challenge us, but I think it speaks a lot of volumes when the team you're thinking might have been a bit worse than us proceeded to concede 4 goals in their first knockout game. It's not exactly a great sign of things to come. Yeah, I mean, off the top of my head, that's all I can think of because, yeah, it's a dreadfully poor group. 7 goals in the entire group is... I mean, no, it's a joke that's been done all over social media games since it's happened. It's ultimately the group of death by boredom. It's to put it into some sort of context. In the last 2 World Cups, there has been a game in each where we have scored 6 goals. We've gone through 3 games now, scored twice, and frankly haven't deserved to score any more. It's and we've still won that group. Yeah, it's if we're not the worst team to have ever won a group at the Euros, we're pretty close based on those performances. And the only exceptions would be a freak one, like that Hungarian one in 2016. Like, well, I don't know. I honestly can't think of another example. It's that bad. So, yeah, it's it's not exactly one to set the pulses racing. And I think these are topics we're ultimately going to come on to, and I'll let the other guys have their say. I've probably, arguably, been the, I think probably more positive, or one of the more positive in the suggesting that there is still hope, the suggesting that this can still click. I am very much down in the doldrums now. There's very, very little positive, I think, that I can take from this, aside from the fact that we've somehow stumbled our way to win the group, and I'm sure that's what we're going to come on to, but there can't have been many worse to do it.
Sam or Finn, do you think England topping the group, was that more down to outstanding play from England or the collective incompetence of Serbia, Denmark and Slovenia?
Take yourself on me, that would be good.
Yeah,
it would be, wouldn't it? Yeah, it would be rather. Very clearly that
we've been going Pete Tong for you. Carry on.
Very, very clearly the latter, isn't it? I mean, it's clearly been a group that the way it's just worked out, it's just a lot of very defensive teams have gone in the same group together. England have always been quite defensive under Southgate relative to, perhaps some of the other elite nation sides. This tournament has clearly been far worse than those others. I think we can all agree on that. But again, England have been accused of being too defensive. Slovenia were very happy to play for a draw in all three of their games, and I think Serbia pretty much were as well. They just didn't quite get one against England. Denmark, they were nothing to write home about, were they? It was just they had moments against England where they looked okay, but they were lucky to get a point against Slovenia, in truth. And obviously I didn't watch their game against Serbia because I was watching the England game, but it sounded like that was an absolute honker as well. So yeah, none of those teams look very good, and it's kind of sad that three out of the four teams have progressed to the next stage, because none of them provided any entertainment at all, really, from a neutral point of view. Yeah.
That I saw was that they should introduce a sort of Eurovision style jury system where England, Denmark and Slovenia can all get voted out for contributing very little to the tournament so far.
Well, that would be great news for Ukraine, because they've just been eliminated, and a Eurovision system would definitely see them get back in. So,
yep. Finn, England, good or bad? I think I already know.
Probably a bit worse than that, if you can use a profanity on this podcast. But I mean, just can I say crap? Like really bad, just boring. The way I put it last night was, I felt like I've watched a lot of football over the past 6 months, and a lot of teams who have kind of not functioned in the way that they should, and tactics that don't function in the way that they should. And both the teams have been managed by managers who owe their credentials to this wonderful FA that we have. So I just want to put it out there that, I think that, I think it's obvious now. I think it was obvious before the tournament, really. I think Southgate will go after this tournament. And to be honest with you, if it's the Netherlands, which is looking likely, I don't see us winning that game. So
we'll get to the rest of the tournament shortly. And I'm sure if Gaz is going to come on and give his comments as he was doing in the last one, we'll see a lot of Ian Foster slander as well. So I just want to sort of ask you all, what do you think needs to change? Why do you think England have been underperforming in this tournament, and what changes do you think we can make in a practical sense with the players that we've got available? And realistically, we're not going to sack our manager halfway through a tournament. Because against Slovenia, not a particularly star-studded team, 0.8 XG, 4 shots on target. What do you think needs to change?
So, can I go?
Yeah, go for it.
So first of all, what I'm thinking is, like, we know we have the players, but I think the squad, as we've alluded to, I think a couple of times on previous podcasts, has been selected in a strange way. We don't have a natural sided left back other than Luke Shaw. And to be honest, even if he's fit now, would you put him in for half an hour maybe? But starting a game, I'm not sure Southgate would want to take that risk, given that he thought he might be a bit more fit than he is at this stage. The system just isn't working. It's so narrow, that everything is having to just go back, and players are occupying similar spaces.
I understand that there is a problem with the system, and often that narrowness is because of what's going on in the left back position. Is a natural right footer who, in the current squad, and obviously you've alluded to Luke Shaw, but he might not be fit. Do you think could provide a little bit of width on that left hand side?
Well, based on last night, I know he wouldn't naturally scream width, but Cole Palmer looked like the only player that we have in the squad that could actually take a man on. Everyone else kind of wants to come inside and play intricate one or two touch football, which we can do, and we've proven in this tournament we can do. But when you're playing against low blocks, it's very hard to do that consistently. So yeah, I think Cole Palmer has to start in this game. I think Kobbie Mainoo made a difference last, and Gallagher didn't pull up trees, so he has to start next game if Southgate is still choosing a partner for Declan Rice. I think you give Mainoo the start. I know that Mainoo might have to be a bit more disciplined than he. It's very obvious that I'll let the motorbike go past. It's very obvious that Slovenia were going to sit back. They had they knew if they got the point, they were very, very likely through. So they were obviously set on sitting back, and Mainoo was there for. I mean, he does that for Man United. I think mainly because Man United aren't a very well set up team themselves, so that they're a bit off the cuff a lot of the time.
I just want to bring Sam and Adam here a bit on Palmer. So you suggest that Palmer should start on the left-hand side. Sam, do you agree with that? Do you think that would provide us with a bit more width on the side?
Well, he was on the right-hand side last night, wasn't he?
Maybe switch Saka.
Yeah, you could do that. You could do that. I think we need to drop a few big names, because I think this has now got to the point where it's so bad. I think a few heads need to roll for this. This is becoming like an even worse version of the England we saw in the noughties and early tens, where all these big names who were just so impressive for their club are doing absolutely nothing for England. And yes, a great deal of it is down to tactics and setup and the manager, but I'm really not impressed with how so many of our players who you expect to drag us out of the hole have been. I'm afraid. Bellingham was just sulking all through the game, really. Whenever his teammates did something he didn't like, he wouldn't then track back when the ball was lost. He would sort of
who plays his arms about. Who plays in that position?
I think there's an argument that actually last night that was, as much as it was just as bad as the other two, if not worse from an England point of view, it was Foden's best game of the three last night. So I think there's an argument for giving Foden.
Make a decision based on one game, because I think Bellingham over the sum of the three games has shown more than Foden has.
Just about, yeah. Well, I think they've had one decent game each, which is Bellingham's decent game with Serbia and Foden's decent game with Slovenia, and they were both poor in the Denmark game. I would agree Bellingham's been marginally better, but you know what? I probably would just give Bellingham one more chance, just because he is, in theory, our best or second best player. I'd give him one more go. I would put Palmer in on the right. I'd put Gordon in on the left. Gordon is a player who, conversely, despite being right-footed, is good with his left and can offer width on that left-hand side, as we've seen for Newcastle. Obviously, he was only on the pitch for about 4 or 5 minutes last night, and he was involved in our best chance of the game. Palmer was good. I think some of the praise is a little overboard. I've seen some people say that he was incredible, and I wouldn't quite go that far, but I think what he did do is what we've all been wanting Foden and Bellingham to do, and which neither of them have done, apart from Bellingham and that goal against Serbia. When a team's playing rubbish, just have a bit of individual madness, get us out of a hole, advance the ball forward. Even if there's no tactical schemes or whatever going on, just run at a player, get past the player, whip a ball in, get it into the dangerous area, get in a good position to score. And if he'd have just connected with that one a little bit more sweetly at the end, he would have got the winning goal. So I think Palmer, whilst not being incredible, certainly put in a good 7 out of 10 performance. And he was our player who looked most likely to make something happen until Gordon came on, and then it was probably those two jointly. So I just those two a start.
We've had come in from Dave Hannigan on YouTube. So Elshnik from Slovenia was on TalkSport earlier. He said they were only really worried when Palmer and Gordon were on the pitch, and was surprised that Southgate didn't bring them on earlier. So that's kind of an interesting perspective from a Slovenian to say that actually they agree with you and thought that Palmer and Gordon dangerous when they came on and maybe deserve a bit more time in the next game. Adam,
yeah, for sure.
would you agree? Would you think Palmer and Gordon?
Yeah, I do. I think I agree wholeheartedly with what Sam's saying about that. There's got to be like a big name dropped here somewhere. Whether that's Foden, whether that's Bellingham, whether that's Saka, we're in a situation where it's a struggle actually to remember a group stage game being quite so bad. I look back to, I've used 2010 as an example quite a lot, and I remember that 0-0 draw with Algeria when we barely threatened their goal, and Algeria at the time were 20 places higher in the rankings than Slovenia are today. So something's got to change. I'm getting the idea that, particularly in this setup, the Foden-Bellingham situation that we've got is starting to resemble the classic Gerrard and Lampard, brilliant players in their own right, but simply cannot play together as much as this is a different area of the field. Gordon, for me, on that left-hand side is an absolute must. You've got the option then of you either play Foden or Bellingham in the centre. You can, I guess, have the option then of switching things up and dropping Bellingham back. But yeah, that's I'd be surprised if we saw at least some sort of a change to shape at this stage, because we seem to be persisting for better or worse. So yeah, Gordon definitely. Palmer, I can absolutely see the argument. Again, it's just going to be a case of fitting him in. And I think the point in the comments and what they've been saying and the Slovenia on TalkSport is spot on. I think the really bizarre thing for me is that we are trying to break down a side who clearly, player for player, do not have as much talent as they have. That's no disrespect to them, because they played their game plan perfectly yesterday, celebrating at the whistle they got through, and rightly so. They did what they had to do. But we've got players who are frankly miles better, and to see that it's not working, see that we're not breaking down, and then get to the point where we're going to wait until there's 5 minutes left to maybe give someone their first minute of the tournament. It just, it's staggering that was the time, and we didn't try and give players a chance, then press home an advantage. It's not as if we were in any danger of losing the game, because they really offered nothing going forward. So, I think what needs to change, I think Gordon and Palmer, as mentioned, I think there's an argument that the shape can change if you want to try and fit everybody in. And I think really there has to be some sort of, people have to have a long, hard look at themselves here and consider exactly what we're trying to do. And the mentality at the minute is just all wrong. I mean, let's call it the party line coming out of the camp yesterday. As it's all fine. Oh, we've won the group. This is what we played for. You didn't win the group out of skill and dazzling football, lads. You won the group because nobody else stepped up and beat us. And if that's the mentality we're going into these knockout games, I think we're now down to a stage where it's either the Dutch or Slovakia that we will face now. I believe that to be true. If you're going into either of those teams with that sort of mentality, there's every chance you'll get beat. And we'll be looking at this as a huge missed opportunity, considering how the draw's gone out. So I think the tactics are absolutely fair. I think the lads have covered it exactly how I would have done. And I think aside from that, there's got to be some sort of mentality shift, because the noises I'm hearing out of the camp right now are not good at all.
I really agree with that. I think that the comments leading up to the game seemed quite thin-skinned, and I don't really think they've grappled with how badly we played.
No, and I think
Denmark game or the Slovenia game, to be
For
honest.
sure. It's one of those where, to be honest, the comments after the Denmark game, I didn't quite mind as much, provided they could then deliver on it. To come out with those comments and then deliver an arguably an even worse performance, what's going on there? How can any of them come out and decide, yeah, we can defend that? This is exactly what we played for. It's clearly not. So what exactly is going on behind the scenes? I don't know, but it's clearly not right.
Yeah, I agree.
I would just want to add as well, not only... Oh, can you hear me still?
Yeah.
You can?
Yeah.
Oh, hang on a sec. Sorry. I somehow managed to turn on my Siri there. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right, I can't hear you. This is a problem. I can see you mouthing, but I cannot hear you. Right, this is going to be a problem. I'm going to come out and back in of the link. Stay tuned, and I'll make my...
All right, good. Right, so I guess I'll just have to improvise. Well, or we will have to improvise what Sam's got.
I wanted to drop in there and just to say, like, before, what I was thinking is, like, I think basically none of the players, they're in a situation where they don't actually know how to change it in a short period of time. Therefore, there's this kind of party line, as Adam mentioned, that's coming out. And they're kind of, they all play for very successful, very successful sides on the whole. And I'm probably just thinking about it as like, okay, we want to win the tournament. People expect us to win the tournament, but we're not playing as well as we should have. Therefore, we're just going to try and look at it as like, okay, next game, we've got through the stage. Yeah, okay, we might not play brilliant. But I honestly think that they think at some point, even though I can't see it, that one or two of the fantastic players that we have are just going to get us out of a hole, and then therefore that can propel us to a stage in the tournament where we've only got 2 games left, and then is that
an argument to play some of those brilliant players though, as opposed to maybe what Sam or Adam are suggesting, and drop them to give them a bit of a kick up the arse?
From my perspective, no, because I agree with Sam and Adam. But I think from the players' perspective, that's what they think might happen or are hoping.
Okay.
I don't know.
I wanted to, before I accidentally turned Siri on and cut myself off, I want to make one more quick point on this that maybe hasn't quite made by the other two, which, not to contradict it, but to sort of supplement it. I think there's something wrong within the camp with each other, and not just what they're saying to the media. The body language of so many of them didn't look right. I know I had a bit of a moan at Bellingham for huffing and not tracking back, but it's not just him. Declan Rice looks bad. He throws his arms up in the air and moans and shouts. Foden and Trippier, I think, spent more time arguing with each other than they did on the ball last night, which was very concerning. Don't know what the lack of connection was. Well, no, I do know what the lack of connection was. It was zero width, but I don't know why they were being so combative with each other all the game. Gazza coming in with the standard comment, which is absolutely true about Foster being very similar to Southgate in terms of his boring football. But there's something to me isn't right. It's like, when you just look at something and you just get a sense, you can't quite put your finger on it. All the stories that came out over the Gerrard, Rooney, Beckham, Lampard era of the players didn't get on because there were cliques at the club level. I just wonder if, with Arsenal and Man City being such, fierce rivals for so long, Liverpool now as well, maybe, obviously, Real Madrid and Bayern in the Champions League even. And now that they're reaching this level...
Stretch. I think the Real Madrid and Bayern is a stretch.
Yeah, but even in that game, there was that moment with Bellingham and Kane, wasn't there, before the penalty, where Bellingham sort of said stuff to Kane to try and get in his head. I wonder if there's any residue from that. Maybe I'm thinking too much into it, but I wonder if now, even if it's just these players now, they're not the plucky, lovable underdogs they were in 2021. I wonder if they've now reached a level of ego whereby they believe their own hype, they believe they're superstars, and that's causing the atmosphere not to be what it is. And the other thing I'd say is there was all the talk coming out, being filtered through journalists in every previous tournament in 2018 and 2021, even in Qatar 2022, about what a happy camp we were, and pictures of the players, frolicking about on inflatable uniforms. And can you imagine the stink if anything like that was tweeted now? But even after the Serbia game, even when we were winning, there was no talk, there was no content of that kind. Maybe I'm stretching, maybe I'm reaching, maybe I'm totally wrong. My gut feeling is that there's something in that camp that's a bit wrong, and I think we'll hear about it in weeks and months to come.
I think there's a lot of pressure associated with being favourites for a tournament. When we came in, we were joint favourites for the tournament with France, actually lower priced than France with some bookmakers. And heavy is the head that wears the crown, as Shakespeare's Henry IV and Stormzy have said. I just want to talk a little bit, I think, specifically about the midfield situation, because that was the one change that Southgate made last night. It was bringing in Conor Gallagher, who had been a substitute in the first 2 games, for Trent Alexander-Arnold. I think most people reacted fairly positively to that before the game. Certainly the removal of Alexander-Arnold, who I think we all agreed on this podcast didn't have much of an impact. Gallagher only lasted until half-time, and he looked a little bit frantic, was maybe the word I would use to describe it. Kobe Mainu came on at half-time, and I think he was a lot better. Certainly if you compare the stats, 33 completed passes, which was twice as many as Gallagher made, and obviously they were both on for 45 minutes. Do we think Mainu should keep his place that he had for the second half? Do we think Gallagher should come back in the team and start again? Or maybe, as G. Payne says, as you can see on your screen, Adam Walton, and we should go to our, I guess, what would be our 4th cab off the rank. Don't know who wants to have a go at thinking who wants to be Declan Rice's midfield partner.
I'll quickly jump in on that one first, then let the others have a take, because I've been an advocate for Adam Walton on the previous podcast. Yeah, I think he's just such a talented player in terms of the passes he can see and the passes he can execute. Is he a Xabi Alonso who has a searing 80-yard pass once a game? Not necessarily, but he plays those balls into space. He plays them into the areas of the pitch where we can overload for Palace. And in that cameo he had in the friendly fairly recently, I think he's got so much about him. Yes, I know some of the hype's got a bit much. Some people talking about people are saying he's the next Modric, he's the next Iniesta, but
that was you who said that.
No, but that's what I mean. What I mean by that is people are mocking that. But what the reason I would slightly defend those statements is we're not saying he's on that level. Yeah. Well, the reason I would defend those statements, we're not saying he's as good as that. We're not saying he's on that level, but he has that knack of just being that general, that one who can dictate play. Look, was Kobe mainly better than Conor Gallagher? Yes, certainly. Was he good enough to warrant starting against Netherlands or Slovakia? I would say no, in all honesty. I think he had a very bright first 10-15. As to be fair, did we as a team? We had a very bright first 10-15 of the second half, and that was the best phase we had all game by a mile. Shame about the first 45 minutes and the final 30, but the 15 in between were actually fairly good, I would say. But then after that, Mainu dropped off completely. Yes, he was better on the ball than Gallagher, but off the ball, he was no better. I'd say maybe even slightly worse, maybe. I really think we've got to give Walton a go. And I think what this does show that he's just veering from one candidate to another, from Trent to obviously Gallagher and now Mainu, and none of them have really grabbed their place in the team.
The suggestion is to veer to another candidate in Adam Walton.
Well, it is. But also I do genuinely think he's the candidate who it should have been in the first place. So I think it's almost like the Derek Adams days where we were having that bad run of form in the 2018-19 season, and he was doing pretty much everything except bring in the players who'd done so well for us the previous year. Granted, that's not exactly the same analogy because Walton is not a player who has a great deal of experience. He nearly has one cap, but at the minute we're doing everything except give Walton a try. And I think that's the one thing we could do that could really improve our control of the midfield. Regarding G. Payne's point about moving Bellingham deeper next to Rice, I don't hate that because, ultimately Bellingham can still impact the game from deep. Yes, he's had his best season of his career as a number 10, but he still had a mighty good season as a number 8 before that for Dortmund. And if you have that sort of trio, what I would use to describe it is similar to how Germany play, because you have... obviously, the three players there, and then one of them is Gundogan, but he roams forward from midfield.
You'd have Bellingham, Walton, and Rice.
Yeah. And Bellingham, like that role that Gundogan plays for Germany of just roaming forward. Like the way Germany have set up the midfield three with I couldn't remember the other player's name. Yeah.
I'll be quite interested to hear what Finn and Adam think, because I don't really agree with you on Mainu. I thought he was very good, and I think that with a team that was playing around him better, I think he would have looked better. I think he had really good ideas. I just think there was a lack of movement around him. So if it was me picking the team, I would probably pick Mainu. But I don't know if Finn or Adam, what are you thinking? Walton, Mainu? I don't think it's going to be Gallagher again.
Let me put like a foot in both camps, because before the game, I would absolutely have been with Sam that Walton would be my choice. And given a clean slate, he probably still would be. But I did think Mainu was good yesterday, and I do think it would do no harm. Let's put it this way, to allow him to continue and start the game. It's to be honest, it's one of the very few players, arguably, in this camp, possibly alongside Palmer and Gordon, who have momentum behind them almost. Like, he's one of the only players in the squad that is coming off the back of a good game, which we haven't really had through much of the tournament, in truth. So I would give him that chance alongside Rice on Sunday against whoever it may be. I do agree to the extent that he hasn't necessarily hugely impressed out of possession, and perhaps it's a little bit harsh to say because we're only judging him on that 45 minutes. But I didn't think he was terrific out of possession in the Iceland friendly either. But I can see Stan's talking, but I can't hear him.
Sorry, done a sound there. You can see that there's a lot of statistics that have shown that maybe at Manchester United, Mainu's not the best player out of possession.
Yeah. So I think when you pull that together, and you see how it has here, it's a risk, but we've been far too risk averse. So what I'm going to do, I mean, yeah, I'd keep him around. I think I mentioned on the last podcast, if I didn't, it's absolutely what I thought. But I would have started Walton against Slovenia. I think it would have made complete sense. But now we've gone down this route, I think it would be a reasonable move to keep Mainu in there with Rice.
Finn, would you lean towards Kobe Mainu? And you're muted as well. We're having a good time tonight.
Yeah, I would, because I think, as George has put in the comments, Walton's had no minutes in this tournament, and whilst Mainu hasn't had a lot, he has had about 50 now. So I did think he made a difference yesterday. And maybe what Sam is saying, that off the ball Mainu wasn't great, but I mean, Gallagher was basically, I suppose, brought in for his off the ball ability and been largely ineffective. And Trent did literally nothing off the ball, pretty much. So he didn't press.
Yeah, Stevie, as you can see on the screen, agrees with you. Never a midfielder. What does Southgate think he can do there?
Well, I was quite intrigued by Trent in midfield, and that. So I think I've always thought, it might work, and I still think it could work in the correct system. I mean, he has played there for Liverpool, albeit not that much, but he has not done too badly. So I mean, I think we've got a hell of a lot of problems here. And whilst I think Walton might be the answer long term, do I think throwing him into this ball of fire when he's had no minutes for England whatsoever is fair? Probably not. So Mainu's played in a dysfunctional, quite a lot of similarities with this England and Man United team, I think. And I think he's played in a dysfunctional team this season and played really well. So he's probably quite used to teams not functioning, to be honest, in his short career. Throw him in and see what happens, because it can't be any worse than what we've tried in midfield anyway. And if we go out, to be honest, for me, that's what I'm expecting. So with the way that we're playing, so
One quick thing I would add to round this off is I think I can see the arguments for Mainu and Walton. Obviously, I go on the side of Walton, but one thing I think we can hopefully all agree is I really would be disappointed if I look at the team sheet and see he started Conor Gallagher there again. Because yes, he was decent against Serbia off the bench, but he was rubbish against Denmark off the bench. He was rubbish starting against Slovenia yesterday, and he really, as much as he had a decent season for Chelsea, which I accept he has not done it for England consistently at all. Certainly not in the last 2 games. I think I would, go with Walton, but mainly I think would still represent the right kind of progress. And just to draw it back to my point about things seeming stale in the camp, things seeming, maybe a bit of friction. I think the way to remedy that, and I think, to be honest, it probably is too far gone to remedy, but if we are going to remedy it, the way to do so is get back to that spirit of 2018 and 2021. What did we have? We had young, hungry players, talented players who played without fear. And I think Palmer was that. I think Gordon was that. And I think one of Mainu or Walton, who knows, maybe even both of them. Probably not, because I think Bellingham does deserve another game, but maybe even both of them could be that. And I think we just need to play without fear and play with excitement and try and recapture a bit of hype that we had in the previous years. At the end of the day, people are a bit of a tangent here, but I've seen some sort of people, who seem to think they're making a very clever point, say, this is classic England, we overhype our players. But you know what? These players deserve to be overhyped based on their club form. We've got possibly behind France, second best. We've got, I think, the best, but best or second best squad at the tournament. We've got Saka, who's been one of Arsenal's best 3 players. We've got Rice, who's been one of Arsenal's best 3 players. Odegaard probably being the other. We've got Foden, who's been man. What's that, sorry?
William Saliba.
Okay, fair enough. Saliba as well, but certainly 2 of the top 4 then. We've got Foden, who last season was Man City's best player. We've got Bellingham, who was Real Madrid's best player. We've got Kane, who was Bayern Munich's best player. We've got Palmer, who was Chelsea's best player. We've got Mainu, who, to be honest, is probably one of Man United's best players. This is an extremely talented squad. We got Pickford, who was one of the best keepers in the Premier League. Kyle Walker, treble winner. John Stones, treble winner. Yes, there have been times in the past where England have overhyped their squads and have been a little bit ignorant of foreign leagues. I'm not saying that's never happened, but the level of talent we've got is unmatched by any other team at the tournament on paper, except maybe by France. And France always have a knack of imploding, barring 2018, of course. But, we absolutely, this is there in our grasp. We have got a stronger squad. And I know Stan's going to talk about who's on what side of the draw in a minute, but we have got a stronger squad than anyone else on our side of the draw. I'm very comfortable in saying that. And I think only France, and at a real push, Spain can contend with us on the other side of the draw. So we'll talk
about the sort of permutations and the algorithms and all of that jazz soon. Just a few comments coming in. Stevie has made an interesting suggestion for midfield that I don't think any of us had. John Stones in midfield. I think if that was to happen, maybe as a replacement more for Rice than Rice's partner. I don't think Rice has had the best tournament, to be honest, although, as Sam said, he did have a very good season for Arsenal. Is that possibly something that could happen? John Stones in for Declan Rice in midfield and then another centre-back in?
I don't hate it. What I would say is the one area of the team that has looked semi-competent over the last 3 games is the centre-backs. And I think that you are running the risk of moving him away from where he's been good. Because I think Stones and Gueye have been our best 2 players of this tournament by a fair margin. They've Guaye's made a couple of mistakes here and there, but he's made up for them brilliantly. Stones has been his usual self for England, Mr. Consistent. So I don't hate it. And I think if you move to this sort of weird inverted 4-backs hybrid system, that's something I wouldn't mind seeing England introduce going forward in the next cycle to the next World Cup. And if you do play that system, what you will often see is Stones stepping out of defence and into midfield like he does for Man City. So that's something I'm open to in the medium to long term. But short term, the defence, certainly the centre-backs aren't the problem. The problem is the full-backs in the centre midfield and maybe Kane, sort of. So, yeah, I don't hate it, but I wouldn't do it, is my take there.
Yeah, I probably agree with you. I think that the sort of disruption to the centre-backs is maybe not worth it, even if Rice hasn't been on his usual Arsenal form this tournament. Sort of Gaza, I think, echoing quite similar to what you said, Sam, dropping Bellingham back, maybe playing him as more of a number 8 than a number 10. One thing that we've talked about a little bit earlier, but I would just like to go, I think, onto just before we talk about the draw and who we might play on Sunday, is the left-back situation. Because Trippier's been playing there, and he's been, I think, solid enough defensively, but again, it's contributing to that lack of width on the left-hand side, because he is a naturally right-footed player. He only attempted 5 crosses against Slovenia. Do you think we need to replace him? And do you think there's anybody in this squad who can offer us a bit of attacking width from that left-back position? Open question.
I can't. Maybe I would give it a go. Yes, because again, it's there's 2 real problem areas with this England system that's kind of sticking out for me. It's the lack of width on the wings, which means the wingers and the fullbacks, going forward, and also as we have discussed in length, the midfield problem. So I would. Do I think that Gareth Southgate will? No, because I believe that he is sort of. I mean, all managers have it, don't they? I mean, Derek Adams was Jan Songo. They all have these like trusted lieutenants that they kind of always go back to, even when things are. And Kieran
Trippier is that for Southgate?
I think Trippier is one of them. Yeah, he's pretty much played every game under Southgate that I can remember in tournaments. I mean, granted because of injury this time, but. He's already said in the press how well he thought he did in the first game. It's weird. It's almost like
who would you like to come in?
Who would I like to see come in? I mean, Joe Gomez, maybe. Someone who has
natural right footer, although he has played more left back for his club side than Trippier has.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't even got a left. We haven't even got a left footer in a centre back. So I mean, again, the makeup of the squad is just it makes it really hard to actually, from a fan's perspective, to look at it and go. I saw a sort of satirical article in the paper that my dad buys. I don't know which one it is, but it was basically like 62 ways that England can improve, and it was basically like every point that like England fans were saying. So one was like, put Cole Palmer through the middle, put Cole Palmer on the right, put Cole Palmer on the left, and it just kept on going like that because no one knows. And the worst thing is, I don't think Gareth Southgate knows. So would I try something if I was the manager? Yeah, but actually, do I think Gareth Southgate, like John Stones, in theory, in midfield, might be a good suggestion? I don't think Gareth Southgate's systems work on the level of, as we're seeing with the problems of Foden, they don't work on, and Foden needs to take some responsibility over himself, and it was a better performance last night, but like they don't work on the same level of tactical complexity that we would like them to, even when England were doing well, the tactics, and there's nothing wrong with basic tactics that work well.
I think there is kind of maybe a situation that tactics are always maybe going to be a little bit more primitive at international level compared to club level. Less time.
For sure, yeah, and I don't necessarily think that they need to be this overcomplicated thing for England to go and win the tournament. You only have to look at like Greece or Portugal or even Wales getting to the semi-final. I mean, Chris Coleman getting to the semi. Chris Coleman. No offense to Chris Coleman, but this is a guy who absolutely flopped at Sunderland famously.
He has a wife and kids. You can't say that about him.
Yeah. That's the one, yeah. So, but you know what I mean? It is possible. And it's still possible for England to go far in this tournament. The problem is like, I don't know what the answer is. And thankfully, I'm not the manager. But Gareth Southgate also doesn't know the answer. But he picked the squad. So it's very weird. Like, he's had all of this time to look over it and pick all of these players. And yet, when he's picked the players, he still doesn't know. Like, he's left some players out for some reasons that he obviously thinks might work, but then
obviously Gazza agrees with you, saying that taking only one injured left-footed left back was naive and stupid, a basic error. Adam,
Rico Lewis from Man City, for example, hasn't played loads, but it wouldn't, you know what I mean?
He's more of a right back really than a left back, but obviously an attacking player would provide a little bit of impetus.
But if you're gonna look at the rest of the left backs in the country, at least take somebody.
Well, I know people might think I'm a closeted Crystal Palace fan with my love for Adam Wharton, but what about Tyreek Mitchell? Should have been on the plane. He had a great season for Palace. He really is quite highly rated by them and their fans. Is he one of the players who's maybe on a par with that long list of quality I mentioned earlier? No, but he's a very adept player at Premier League level, and I think would he offer more than Trippier? Absolutely. Ben Chilwell's the other one. I know that he's also had struggles with fitness, and he's also not had the best season in terms of form, but at least he was fit enough to play the last couple of games of the Premier League season. Luke Shaw, let's be honest, we're not going to see a minute out of Luke Shaw at this tournament, are we? I think we just give up the bloody hope otherwise now. It was a stupid decision taking him. It's an even more stupid decision to not take any other left back at all. So we just got to bite the bullet on that one. But I think, if you're Ben Chilwell or Tyreek Mitchell sat with your feet up on a beach somewhere watching that game, you'd be probably looking at the bottom of your pint glass thinking I could be playing much better than Trippier is now and I could be what England needs. And it's a shame that we left him at home. We should have taken one of those two on the plane for me.
I mean, obviously, I suppose the issue now is that we can't choose anyone who's not there. Adam, would you like to see
Saka?
Would you like to see Gomez come in, Adam?
I don't think it would help. To be honest, I really don't. I like Joe Gomez. I like his versatility, and I like how he can perform. I mean, he's played in every position in defence of Liverpool and deep in midfield, so he's got a lot. But I think specifically for the system we've got and how important getting a left footer in there is, I don't think really he'd mark so much of an upgrade on Trippier as much as I like him. And, let's not forget he plays at his absolute best at centre-back, so he's even less likely really to offer anything going forward. I don't think it helps that he's literally never scored a goal, but I don't think that's going to be an issue from left-back anyway. It's hard to resolve. I agree with what's been said, that at international level tactics can be a lot more basic. That's absolutely true. But one thing that's not complicated is the fact that you need a left side. And to go in, and I think to not have one fit left back in the 26-man squad, and indeed, as Sam, I think you mentioned in the recent podcast, not to have one in the 33-man squad when it was first announced, is bordering on negligence. And it's not the only options to say Chilwell, Mitchell. There's Alfie Doughty at Luton, who I think a lot would consider. If you want to go really left field, could Leif Davis of Ipswich have done a job? It's possible. It wouldn't be my choice, but
Championship, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's something. So to not pick any of them and just say, oh, well, we hope Luke Shaw's going to be fit at some point, particularly when you see how injured players have gone on in the past. I recall Rooney 2006, where he was fit after 2 games, but struggled to build up to it after the metatarsal injury that he had. I think, there's plenty of options. So to assume Shaw would be fit and be able to not only be fit, but play a significant role, and then not even pick another option, it's just stupid. It's completely stupid. And, what can you do from here? I think we're too far gone now to change. I mean, Gomez, as I say, I like, but I don't think he'd be the solution. I guess you've got to try and fix that left-handed issue, probably with Anthony Gordon rather than changing the fullback at that point. Unless somebody magics an injury out of somewhere and we have to, pull in a replacement and it just happens to be a left-back. Well, I'm not even sure that would be allowed, but, it's...
What about Saka? I think that's only allowed for goalkeepers, Adam. I think. So what about Saka as a left back? That's just it's certainly nothing that any of us would have thought about before the tournament. But
he did very early in his career start his career there for Arsenal, didn't he?
He did, and he's got the experience. I mean, it's not something I again, it's not going to be a preference for Admiral. I recall that we tried him as a left wing back in a Nations League game at Italy away, and he didn't particularly set the world alight there. And then predictably, the comments online afterwards were all about why he's starting Saka on the left, he's a right-sided. So, it's one where you can't really win. Hey, it's got to be worth a try, hasn't it? Yeah, I've mentioned that I think we're probably too far in now. We may as well continue with Trippier there while we're while we're carrying on and try to fix the left side of thing further at the line. But hey, I wouldn't hate it at this point. If we put Saka down, it kind of kills two birds with one stone, because you're putting Saka at left back where he's got experience, and you're freeing up a space easily to get Cole Palmer into the team. So yeah, I probably wouldn't do it, but I certainly wouldn't hate it either.
Not to go on about this left-sided problem too much more, but I mean, like, just to emphasize how stupid not bringing another left back is. We brought in Tom Heaton for a training goal. Why do we need 4 goalkeepers in the camp? And we didn't even well, to me, it doesn't even look like a lot of those left backs were considered if they weren't even in the 33-man squad. It's just bizarre. It's absolutely.
To be fair, Heaton isn't actually a registered player, so that I think I get what you're saying.
That's kind of my point. Do you know what I mean? It's like you're bringing in a player. Why do we need to bring in a player that isn't registered?
It's probably just so they can have like 7-a-side games with 1 keeper each or something in training. It's probably just to help with training exercise. I'm not too bothered about that from that point of view. But yeah, still the left back situation is just mad.
It goes back, I think, to I've seen in the comments. I think a lot of us think that Adam Walton should be starting, but if you're not going to give him a minute in the group stage, is that not a slot that could be filled with another left back who would have probably played every group game? I don't know.
Got a comment from Lee Williamson, who I think plays for the England women's team. England's matches have been as exciting as Whittaker and Hardy. A little bit harsh, maybe, on Whittaker and Hardy, to be honest. Should we talk a little bit about England going forward? As much as we may not like to imagine any more England games, we will be playing on Sunday at 5 o'clock in Gelsenkirchen. That's known. We don't know who we will be playing against yet. It's most likely going to be the Netherlands after they finish third in their group behind Austria and France. It could be Slovakia, depending on how results go in the final group, which is at 8 p.m. Just after we record this podcast. The Netherlands have got 4 points from their games, so theoretically didn't do as well as England did. They were playing France and Austria, who probably both better teams than what we've played in the group stages. But their only victory in the group stages was over Poland. We've played Netherlands twice before in the Euros. Euro 88, where they went on to win it, and a 4-1 victory in Euro 96. Very famous game where the Netherlands scored right near the end to knock Scotland out. I'm sure a few of our listeners will probably remember that. We are on the easier side of the draw. So if you look at the way that the draw has turned out, Spain, Germany, Portugal, France, Belgium, now that they've finished second in their group, all on the other side of the draw. Teams we've got confirmed on our side are Switzerland, Italy, Austria, and Romania. So we'll start off with our next game on Sunday, probably against Netherlands, maybe against Slovakia. How are we feeling?
Well, I'm a little bit more confident if it's Slovakia than it's Netherlands, with all due respect to them, but I still don't think it's a guaranteed win. I still think Slovakia are a better team than Slovenia, I think. So if they can do what Slovenia did, but do it better, there's every chance that they can to extra time and penalties, or even get a win in 90 minutes if they can hit us on the counter. Slovakia are a well-organised team. Of course, man for man, are they anywhere near to the list of quality I reeled off about 20 minutes ago? No, they're not. But they're well-organised and they know what they're doing as a team, which we really seem to lack to. So I think they've got a chance. They could frustrate us, Slovakia. If it's Netherlands, we've got to really buck our ideas up or we're going to lose. Yes, they came third with 4 points, whereas we came first with 5 points. But like you said yourself, Stan, France and Austria are just such better teams than Denmark, Serbia, or Slovenia are. So I think even probably Poland are a slightly better team than maybe Serbia and even Slovenia are to an extent. They just had a much tougher group, and they got through it at the end of the day. I think the thing with them is, with Netherlands, is you get the feeling that often teams that do well in tournaments are teams that grow into the tournament, and they might just be showing signs of doing that. Well, yeah, maybe. But with Netherlands, the France game showed they can defend brilliantly. The Austria game, albeit they lost, showed they can attack very well. They actually dominated that game. They created a higher XG, and they scored 2 goals. So actually, you know what? If they can just tie in the defence of the France game and the attack of the Austria game, they could really take us to the sword, and they could really give us a torrid time.
Their midfield's a problem, though. I do believe their midfield's a problem. Like it's not very in there. They're missing Frankie De Jong.
De Jong's a great player. Yeah,
Virgil van Dijk. I mean, although I do genuinely believe Virgil van Dijk is on his way out. And I do think that yes, he is a brilliant defender. But De Ligt hasn't got that much pace. Van Dijk,
De Ligt playing that much. Is he in their squad? I'm not sure, but it's been De Vrij.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, I got them mixed up.
De Ligt is in their squad, but he's not been playing. Yeah.
Sorry, but De Vrij, neither have got very much.
I think the next cab off the rank who is a very quick centre back, so would solve that pace issue, is Mickey van der Ven of Tottenham. He's come in off the bench in a couple of games for them.
Right. Yeah. Look, if we were to play Netherlands, I think we struggle, especially as we're playing now. But I also do think that should the team be pulled through by some of its excellent players, like the players are hoping, I do think we can cause them a lot of problems. I think we could cause anybody a lot of problems. But what I'm saying is, I think Netherlands' defence, you'd look on paper as a big strength of theirs, but actually, what I more worry about is like Simons and Gakpo and Depay against especially Gakpo against Trippier. I think it's Gakpo against Trippier, right? That's going to be. I'm really not looking forward to that.
I think they change it about quite a bit. I think Gakpo started on the left against Austria, but he certainly can play on the right. Yeah. Look, I get the point of what you're saying, Finn. I think their midfield isn't great man for man at all. But again, it's just if they can get it to click as a unit, whereas we don't, it could be big problems. I'm not saying that Netherlands are this amazing team who are unbeatable and who are going to suddenly make the final, although they might make the final after on the easy half of the draw. But, I'm not saying that they're among the best 2, 3, 4, 5 teams in this tournament. I agree they're not. They're probably about the 6th or 7th or 8th best team. So they very much have holes we can exploit if we get our proverbial together, because we've got to. We absolutely cannot afford this now because, yes, worst case scenario last night, if Denmark had got a goal, we would have come second rather than top, and we would have still been in the tournament. If we have a stinker on Sunday, there's no hiding place. Worst case scenario there is we go out of this tournament, and that's Southgate's time in charge ending in ignominy. We cannot afford to play so badly again. Like I say, I've kind of got over what I'd do. I'd freshen it up a bit. I'd go back to a 4-3-3. I'd put Palmer and Gordon in as the wide players. I'd give Kane and Bellingham one more game each, with the fear that either of those two could have a rocket up their backsides to be dropped if they don't pick it up. But I'd give Bellingham one more game in CM as an 8, advancing forward, similarly to how Gundogan does for Germany. I'd give Kane one more game as a 9, and hopefully with the likes of Palmer and Gordon running in behind, he can drop deep and make that work better than he's been doing. I would go Saka at left back, and I would go Trent at right back, and I'd go otherwise unchanged, because I think that some heads need to roll here for how bad we've been. So that's what I think. I don't think that they're unbeatable, but I think unless we make some radical changes, we are going to get beaten by them. And that's my prediction as it stands. I hope I'm
nice optimistic.
It's one of those I think is hard to predict for a number of reasons. One, because we don't know who we're going to be playing yet. It's if the Czechs win tonight, it's Slovakia, and if they don't, it's the Netherlands. Right? Something on those.
Either the Czech Republic or Georgia have to win, and then we'll be playing Slovakia. If neither of them win, we'll be playing the Netherlands.
So there's no chance we could play anybody from that group, is there? No. From the Czech group.
I am pretty sure it's either Slovakia or Netherlands. And if it's not, and we play someone else, I'm going to look very stupid when this podcast goes out. Go on,
That's
Adam.
fine. We've all been there. I think ultimately at this point, I struggle to trust us to beat anybody. Slovenia are the third lowest ranked team in the tournament, and we failed to beat them and never really looked like beating them. So it's hard to say. I mean, whoever it is, be it the Slovakians, I think obviously something needs to change. And when I say something, it's not to say one thing needs to change. A lot of things need to change. The mentality is one I've brought up, and I think we're all a little perturbed by what we're hearing coming out of the camp, and particularly some of those interviews where I think they must have been watching a different game to all of us yesterday. So that's got to change. There's got to be lineup changes, whoever we're playing. I think every change that Sam's mentioned is fair. It's not necessarily that I'd make all of them, but I wouldn't hate any of them. Gordon and Palmer. Gordon for sure is an obvious for me. Palmer would be the next one, and there's got to be something done in the midfield. We've discussed that to death, and probably will be again on Monday. Truthfully, I can't have a prediction before I know who we're playing, but whoever we're playing, I don't necessarily think we're going to blow them away. It's in a strange way. And I know it's a classic cliche at this point. The Dutch may suit us more because it's not a low block necessarily we'd have to break down. But I just think their talent and the way that they could overrun us would probably make them favourites in the same way that I think we'd be narrow favourites against Slovakia if it is them. But whoever it is, as I say, plenty has got to change.
Just quickly, like Sam said about Saka, I wouldn't be opposed to Saka if it was Slovakia. No disrespect to Slovakia, but if it's Netherlands, I know I've already mentioned Trippier versus Gakpo. I'd still be more confident in Trippier doing a better defensive job than Saka against Gakpo.
Yeah, I probably would agree with that, to be honest. Well, we'll be back on Monday to give the post-mortem of the either Netherlands or Slovakia game. I'm sure that consensus here seems to be that we'd rather play Slovakia, but even that, with our current form, is no gimme. So, we'll be back on Monday, same time, same place, to have a live discussion about our game on Sunday. Until then, it's a goodbye from me. It's a goodbye from Finn.
Bye.
It's a goodbye from Sam.
Good.
And it's a goodbye from Adam.
Bye.
Thank you very much for listening. Catch us on all the usual places, wherever you get your podcasts. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for all the comments you've been dropping in. Gave us a really good discussion. And we will see you all 6:45 on Monday.